Whether you're a veteran of Dice and Dungeons or a newcomer to the table, we welcome you to the Systemaniac Podcast, where we break down tabletop role-playing systems both popular and niche so that you can discover your next campaign setting. My name is Evan, occasional player and forever game master, and I am joined for this inaugural episode by Justin, a local tabletop role player and today's guest that's going to help us navigate our opening topic. Now, when we start talking about role-playing and throwing dice, there's only one game that comes to mind: Dungeons and Dragons. As we kick this podcast off, we're going to start with the oldest and most widely played system in print, since it makes for a good starting point when talking about tabletop role-playing games, and it's something nice and familiar for a majority of players. Now, Justin and I will get rolling with this episode after this brief message.
I asked what kind of family she wanted. She said, a family like yours.
Learn more about adopting a teen at adoptuskids.org. You can't imagine the reward. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
And welcome back. Just to go ahead and kick things off, how long have you been role-playing? How long have you been playing in the system?
I would say approximately 5, maybe 6 years now. And that's counting just role-playing altogether, not D&D. Because I actually started off with a system called Journal. It was an interesting one that a friend of mine, the one who introduced me, his name was Paul. It was a system he was actually creating. He was making his own system. And then after maybe 2 years, we converted over to D&D just because it was easier for everyone else to understand mechanic-wise. But about maybe 5, 6 years.
Gotcha. Now that's long, generally. How long have you been in Dungeons and Dragons specifically?
Dungeons and Dragons specifically, about 3 to 4 years, somewhere in that area.
Good long time. Sounds like y'all have had a lot of fun with it. Now, you mentioned where you started off in a different system, moved over into D&D. Do you mind elaborating on the reasons for that real quick? Like, it sounds like y'all had a good thing going and something that y'all were working on, so what made you come over to Dungeons and Dragons? What made you say, this is the one we're going to go to?
So it was kind of a group consensus. It wasn't just like me specifically saying, hey, let's change over to this one. The role-playing aspect of it and the combat aspect was fine. Like, there was nothing wrong with, like, the gameplay or how it was or anything. But it was like a whole new system Paul was creating from the ground up. So Dungeons & Dragons already had a lot of answers to questions that we didn't have even formed yet. So we had to, like, create entirely new spells. We had to recreate old spells while keeping them different but the same at the same time. It was just a giant mess at first. It got to the point where we're like, yeah, it's just easier if we just do this.
Yep. Well, I think it's on its 5th edition now, so that's a lot of iterations that they've been able to simmer it down. So we'll move on to the next topic. Now, Dungeons & Dragons, obviously there was a period of time where it was not considered very cool. Now, you can see it just about everywhere. I mean, podcasts, videos, things you see on the TV and on the computer. So why do you think it's gotten this popular? What do you think's gotten it to this point, if you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a multitude of reasons. I think one of them is definitely the advancement of technology. So, I mean, it looked cool from the beginning, but, like, the artwork's gotten way better. You've got, like, much more in-depth with stuff than you have before. You've got 5th edition now, there's the core rule books, but you've also got, like, all these other books that come out with either, like, say, the Xanathar's Guide that just has additional information in it you could use, or, like, The Rise of Tiamat, which is just, like, an adventure made by the Wizards of the Coast, the people that made it. So, there's, like, a lot more to it. Another reason I think would be, and this is mainly my thing, so some people are into sports and stuff. Well, I think, me personally, how I look at stuff, I go to school, I go to work. Why do I want to spend my free time, dealing with more of real life? I mean, that just doesn't appeal to me. I like to go into fantasy and stuff because it's like, look, I don't get to see this every day whenever I'm just out doing whatever. So I think over time, more and more people, maybe not exact same reasons as me, but more it's like, hey, we don't get to see dragons burn down villages, or we don't get to see, orcs just picking up sheep and throwing them as weapons. It's like, man, let's see some weird stuff.
Yeah, you kind of get to make your own stories in it. I don't know, fantasy for me is always, and just role-playing in general, has always been a very fun place to go, just to tell stories, share it with friends. Before we started recording, you were talking about how great the system was just for that interpersonal connection, sitting down and talking with people. Would that be one of the reasons that it's really grown in popularity recently?
Oh, yeah, because at first you assume it's like some sort of nerd game and stuff, and I mean, to an extent it is, but I mean, that's not really a bad thing. But you got to think about it. It's one of those where you laugh at people for, like, playing it. It's like, oh, you play Dungeons & Dragons and stuff. And then you think about it, it's like, You literally cannot play this game without at least one other person. Like, it physically requires 2 people. So already you have to have at least a friend. And then the more friends you have, the better, because then you have more people that are working together, that are sharing these moments together and just having fun. And that just want to escape reality and just do something stupid, or even, do something cool.
You mentioned escaping reality and advancement in technology in particular. Now, you don't even have to have 1 or 2 friends like in the room with you. I personally have done stuff through Roll20, which is a site that you can use to do role-playing online, connect with folks who want to go with different systems. So that, I think, has helped spur that popularity along as well. I don't know if you've ever done anything with Roll20, but it's an interesting program. And just to add everything that we've been talking about with the popularity, just to throw a little fact at it, according to Roll20, they released a report earlier this year. I believe they released it back in April, putting out just what the percentage of people are playing. Number 1 on that list, you can probably guess it just based on the topic. Over 50% of players were reporting that Dungeons & Dragons that was their system of choice. That's what they were playing. And then over 50% of games that were ongoing in Roll20 were in Dungeons & Dragons as well. And second place by a long shot was 14% unspecified. So it is a huge and growing community, and it's a really cool thing. So now that we've established that there is a big community for it, how easy do you think D&D is for folks that have never role-played before? They're not already a part of this community. Would this be a good place for them to start off? Would there be a different system they should start with?
So I don't have much experience with many other systems. I have played other systems. I've played a couple. From the few that I've played, I would say Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition specifically is real easy to get into, and it's very simple. It's kind of forgiving, essentially, like how, you do something, oh, okay, well, here's the rules for it, here's the mechanics behind it, here's the different possibilities that you have. And I think Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, while you definitely can get more advanced with other systems, I think it's good to help get people that are completely new role-playing systems in general, because it gets them into the role-playing aspect, and it gets them into the whole world concept. So if you do decide to do something more advanced, it's like, okay, well, all we got to learn is the mechanics. I don't have to learn, there's an NPC talking to me. How do I react to this? What do I say? Do I have to use a voice or something? Do I have to be, oh, hello, sir, my name is Merlin the Wizard? Or do I have to just walk up and be like, hello, I am Sly the Rogue, and don't talk to me, don't look in my eyes, I have a background, and I will tell you about it.
Indeed. So that ease of startup, I would absolutely agree with you on that. It's probably one of the easiest systems just to pick up and run with. Of course, it also doesn't hurt that the basic rules for the game are actually available for free online. You can just look at, and that gives you the basic rules. Now, it's not as expansive as even the starter set, although the starter set for D&D it's one of the cheapest that I've found. It's only $20 to get the starter set, and that gets you the dice, a map, and a campaign to play, plus the basic rules, and that's been a lot of fun. So, final thing, just the rapid fire, all I need from you is a number. So, ease of play, 1 to 10. How easy is the game to play?
9.
9? Ease of access, how easy is it to get into the game?
9.
Another 9. And last but not least, is the system fun to play? Subjective, but how fun is it?
10.
Alright, so there you go. 2 9s and a 10. Thank you for joining us, Justin, and we hope to hear from you again about how your campaigns are going. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back next week for our first real system comparison, D&D versus Chaosium's 7th edition, Call of Cthulhu. Until then, best of luck, be brave, and don't stop rolling. We'll see you next week.